Hello and welcome back to the NFL Matchbook podcast. It's week 8, best times, and I'm delighted to say the band is back together finally. The injury reports came clean. Rob, Drew, Suma are all with me. Drew, I'll go straight to you first on week 7 takeaways. But firstly, you want to talk a little bit about pocket quarterbacks and you can lead into that. Drew, you went 4-0 last week.
It was a good week. It's been a good season. Glad that we can give people some winners. But no, my major takeaway and what's on my mind most as we head into week 8, it is a cyclical league. Things change quickly. You have to recognize this is all small sample size, but it surely feels like we're witnessing a pretty massive shift in terms of what it takes to be a successful quarterback in the NFL. It's like every true blue pocket quarterback has struggled to find anything consistent. There's sort of a pretty clear through line between all of the guys who are struggling, including Matt Ryan, who's no longer a starting quarterback, and that is that they don't have mobility. They don't have an ability to really kind of add an extra dimension to their game. And on the other side, guys that we had left for dead, didn't think were players in this league, well, they can complete the easy stuff and they can scramble, and all of a sudden, like, they're winning games, they're covering spreads. Like, it's a very wild paradigm.
Yeah, over to you, Rob. And there's a few things I want to throw you about takeaways. There's so much to talk about. It feels last week there was a lot to. You want to focus in on the Ravens. They're involved in Thursday Night Football, but their offense right now is not firing.
Yeah, I thought that the return of Rashad Bateman would be huge for the Ravens offense last week. They face a Cleveland defense who really couldn't stop a nosebleed this year. And the Ravens were dead last in yards per play in the NFL last week. This includes the Broncos offense that couldn't move the ball, the Colts offense, all the horrible offensive performances you saw last week. The Ravens averaged 4 yards per play against the Cleveland Browns defense, and they just couldn't get any separation against the Browns defensive backs. So this is going to be interesting for Thursday Night Football, especially the status of Mark Andrews up in the air, Rashad Bateman kind of up in the air as well. But I'm kind of concerned about that offense going forwards. They haven't been able to put away teams yet so far this year. We saw it with the Giants a couple weeks ago as well, where the Ravens couldn't really muster anything in the second half in that game. There's just too much talent. They have a great quarterback. They need to be able to get it together. So keeping my eye on this team, because their stats from the first 3 games of the year offensively versus what we've seen recently are very staggering. And I would eventually hope that, or expect it, to get back to normal with Rashad Bateman there. But last week was nowhere close to that. So teams going in weird directions offensively. You have the Ravens on the decline. You got the Cardinals on the incline. A lot of stuff like that happens like at this midway point of the year, basically.
Yeah, and before I bring Suma in, I did want to touch on a tweet you put up there. I think it was yesterday or the day before. There's obviously been that stat about Brady being the home dog and his record being the home dog. And because Bucks are now not favorites, a lot of people are steering away from that based on that trend. Just talk very briefly about that trend and what you think of it.
Yeah, I don't think much of trends. I know I've come to be known as Trendy Rob here on the Matchbook podcast, and that's the nickname because I do throw out some every now and then because I know that there's people that eat that stuff up. So I'll make it very clear I don't buy into trends, and some people do take value in that stuff. But yeah, I always find it hilarious. It's like, can't wait to bet Tom Brady at home as a home dog, and then the line moves to -1. And they're like, oh, no. The Bucks aren't a home dog anymore. Don't want any piece of this. Like, it's affected the outcome of the game whatsoever that the line has moved from +1 to -1. Or the people who are like, bet the Bucks early in the week because they were home dogs. Brady's so good at home dogs. Now they're favored. Should I buy out? Why would you buy out? So, like, I'll never understand that. People get fixated on, like, these very meaningless trends. And, well, like when the line shifts through 0, I've seen all sorts of crazy tweets about that, about, fading the team that shifted. I don't even want to get started on this stuff.
Yeah, we'll cut you off there. Suma, talk to me about closing line value this season. You wanted to speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, not specifically about closing line value, but about closing lines in general. I think everyone will agree that we are witnessing kind of a very interesting season where lots of teams that were supposed to be very good have been completely trash, like the Broncos offense, Colts offense, Seahawks are good all of a sudden. The Bears are also not as bad as people thought. So overall, I think there were, at least subjectively, more interesting results versus our preseason priors than compared to last season's. And I wanted to see what how that's reflected in the closing line. And I always look at the closing line, how it performs against the actual game result. And it's interesting that the mean absolute error for seasons past on spreads was 10.24, and this season it's 9.15. So the closing line is actually closer to the actual result on spreads, but on totals it's kind of the opposite. Totals are averaging, or were averaging 10.57 over the past 10 years, and this season it's 11.13. And I think that makes kind of sense because we have a completely different scoring environment and the market needed some time to pick up. But it's interesting that this hasn't been the case, even though we are every week talking about the 6-1 Giants and the bad Denver Broncos offense. So I found it very interesting that the spread was not as worse compared to the totals.
Some interesting stuff, Suma, and it's one to keep an eye on. And you mentioned the 6-1 Giants. We can't not talk about them in our four marquee matches. So I'll go through what we're going to cover today. We're going to cover Cardinals at Vikings, Giants at Seahawks, 49ers at the Rams, and Patriots at the Jets. Any other bets and best bets are covered. I know I promised last week, so we're going to get to a few YouTube comments both at the end and maybe during the show. So keep them coming in. And if you are watching on Twitter, head over to the YouTube and leave a chat and a comment if you do want the guys to answer. So we'll get straight into it and take a look at the betting. Firstly, as we have it at matchbook.com for the Cardinals at the Vikings. You can see the money line there at the bottom of the screen. Cardinals 2.66, the Vikings 1.56. Cardinals are getting a 3.5 head start, and the total here is 49. A tiny bit shaded towards the under there. That's been moving in and out there. We'll go to you on this one, Drew. Take it away in the Cardinals at the Vikings. What are you liking in terms of a bet here?
Yeah, I make virtually no difference between these teams. I know the win-losses are very desperate, but I don't really see a ton of margin of disparity here. And that said, the Cardinals integrating Hopkins with extra time to prepare for this one gives them a little bit of a bump on top of the Vikings kind of going into their bye week with such a successful record, but on such a really questionable performance. Them coming out a little bit cold because when you're that successful and you have an early-ish bye, there's not a lot of incentive to really innovate, change things, mix things up, figure out what was going wrong, right? So I think you could see a little bit of a stale Vikings here, and the Cardinals are a little bit of a different animal. I did like a lot of what I saw on the card from the Cardinals on Thursday Night Football in terms of utilizing Kyler Murray on the ground earlier in the game instead of waiting until they were down by 2 scores. And if they can kind of continue that trend, and we see a little bit more of them leaning into his mobility to extend drives in the first half of this game, then I think this is a Cardinals team that's live for an upset. I played them taking the points. I played them on the money line. I think 2.66 is fair value. I make fair here, including a little bit of a home field advantage for the Vikings. I'm still, nowhere close to a 3-point game here. So I like both those angles, and in general, Cardinals kind of climbing back into a playoff race wouldn't shock me because the NFC is that bad.
Yeah, Suma, you're in full agreement with Drew on the Cardinals. Talk to me a little bit about the Vikings. Is Kirk Cousins, is he slowly getting it together there? Proven performance last week, 4-0 recently. So is there danger we're kind of writing off the Vikings here a little bit, or because I guess with all three of you are leaning towards the Cardinals here?
Yeah, I think when we look at their season so far, the Vikings have been kind of exceeding expectations in terms of wins and losses, but the underlying metrics are not really any good, and that starts with the Vikings offense. They rank 17th in pass DVOA, 14th in EPA per dropback. They have a high success rate, but they're not generating as many big plays, explosive plays as you would probably like to. They had a few great plays against blown coverage, against the Dolphins, against the Packers. But overall, I think that their offense has not really lived up to the standard that I thought they would be after week 1 against that Packers game. They're really not very consistent so far. And I think this handicap, at least for me, starts with the Cardinals offense against the Vikings defense. And I think it's a very interesting case in terms of how we need to apply context to data. The Cardinals have been very bad offensively to start the season. Everyone knows that. But now DeAndre Hopkins is back and they got Robbie Anderson. And I think having DeAndre Hopkins in there, and we saw that against the Saints already, changes the whole complexity of their offense. And even more, what was so interesting about the Thursday night football game was that Hopkins, and that was one of the biggest criticisms of Cliff Kingsbury as a play designer in recent years, usually DeAndre Hopkins was always on one island on the left side of the formation, always as the outside wide receiver. And against the Saints, he played 27 snaps in the slot, which everyone wanted to see for years now. And I think 27 snaps, it's somewhere, it's I think 17 snaps more than the previous high under Cliff Kingsbury. So they're really starting to move DeAndre Hopkins around and basically create a Green Bay with Davante Adams kind of offense where they try to dictate opposing coverages. And that makes me incredibly bullish on their offense going forward. I also think that Robbie Anderson as a deep threat who can take away some of the safety coverage will tremendously help in this in this specific case for the Cardinals offense. And when we look at the Vikings defense, the Vikings defense has played an average schedule of opposing pass offenses in terms of EPA per play and success rate. They have played the Packers in week 1 without Alan Lazard and 2 starting offensive tackles. And we all know right now that the Packers offense is not good whatsoever. Then they got the Eagles on Monday Night Football, got absolutely destroyed. Then they played the Lions. They conceded 25 points. Amon-Ra St. Brown left in the second quarter. The Saints, first game with Andy Dalton, no Alvin Kamara, no Jarvis Landry for a decent part of the game, no Michael Thomas, got 25 points. Chicago Bears, 22 points. Justin Fields looked like young Joe Montana in that game. And then against the Miami Dolphins, they had Skylar Thompson as the opposing quarterback, and he got injured in the second quarter. And then we had Teddy Bridgewater, who had 0 first-team reps during the whole week. So they really played a very fortunate schedule of opposing offenses, and that resulted in a 24th rank in overall DVOA. So I just think that their defense is not good, and especially DeAndre Hopkins will, along with Zach Ertz, will be a tremendous mismatch for the defense because they cannot defend the middle of the field. On passes over the middle of the field, the Vikings defense ranks 32nd in EPA per dropback, 32nd in DVOA. Eric Kendricks, Hicks, Chen Sullivan, they're all bad in coverage this year. And this doesn't really bode well for a Cardinals offense that can attack them with Zach Ertz and DeAndre Hopkins over the middle. So I really think that the Cardinals offense will be too much for them in this matchup. And then is the question, can Kirk Cousins and the Vikings offense be enough to score so many points to win by margin here or by more than a field goal? And I think that will not be the case. At least that's what I'm banking on. It also is interesting that Kirk Cousins, who has been very good against the blitz for several years now, is completely struggling against any blitz this year. I don't really know why that is. Maybe it's the new scheme. They don't have enough good hot routes. He isn't getting the ball out quickly. I don't know what it is, but he's performing very, very poorly against the blitz. His passing grade drops 30 points against the blitz. Arizona has the 4th highest blitz rate in the league. That might be another mismatch, but overall, I just think that the Cardinals offense will score points here, and I just don't see the Vikings offense on a level that makes me believe they can beat them out by more than a field goal.
Yeah, I've never seen Rob. I've never seen such a takedown from my half-hearted Vikings defense there and what they're doing. Based on results, they're obviously 5-1. Talk to me a bit about Kyler Murray, because I shared your concerns after watching him a couple of Sundays ago, and I was like, what is going on here? And going into Thursday Night Football, everyone was talking about, based more trends-wise, I guess, on Thursday Night Football, that this is going to be an unders game, Saints, Cardinals, and end up being a firecracker. And is this going to kickstart his season, perhaps? And Suma's touched on a lot of the detail there with their offense.
For sure. I mean, there's not too many quarterbacks who are going to be able to keep the same numbers consistently when they're without their number 1 wide receiver. especially a player of DeAndre Hopkins' caliber. So we look at Kyler Murray's career with Hopkins on the field versus off the field. The numbers are very staggering for a reason. He's a game-changing wide receiver. Defenses now have to respect him. It opens up everything else. So I do think that despite all the jokes you're going to hear about Call of Duty being released this week, I do think this is a good matchup for Kyler Murray going forwards. A lot of the points Suma and Drew already hit on were very valid, but Minnesota's defense is last in the league in yards per pass attempt at 7.9 yards allowed per pass attempt. When you consider the fact that the last three quarterbacks they faced were Andy Dalton, Justin Fields, and then the combination of Skylar Thompson and Teddy Bridgewater, all three of those quarterbacks or those combos had greater than 8 yards per pass attempt against this Vikings defense. So there's going to be lots of opportunities for the Cardinals. One thing that Suma mentioned, which I think is great, was Kirk Cousins against the blitz this year. He is really struggling. Suma mentioned the PFF grades and how badly they drop in terms of passing grades. Look at the turnover-worthy plays. Kirk Cousins has a 2.1% turnover-worthy play on when he's not blitzed. 5.9% when he is blitzed this year. We saw a lot of that in the Eagles game earlier on this season, that Monday Night Football game where the Eagles blitzed him to shreds and he couldn't do anything. But you really strip out the week one game against Kansas City, where Arizona's entire secondary was hurt and J.J. Watt was hurt. And they've been getting healthier and healthier since then. But from week two onwards, the Arizona defense is 8th in the league in EPA per play. They have been a much, much better defense as they've gotten healthier. They've played the Eagles offense in that span. They've played the Raiders. They've played the Seahawks offense, which is very good. By the way, they held the Seahawks to 19 total points. And a similar quarterback in Geno Smith, who struggles against the blitz, struggled against this Vance Joseph defense as well. So I agree with all the points that these guys have made. I don't see much separating these two teams right now. I like the Arizona Cardinals this weekend as well. And hopefully parking enforcement didn't come too hard at Drew for those 5 minutes there either.
Well, I got to ask Rob a quick question because you made a very strong case there. Is there a bet to be made on Cardinals playoff? Yes. And is there a bet to be made against the Vikings winning the NFC North right now?
I think yes to both. The problem, I believe the Cardinals' odds to win the division right now are 8-1. Can someone correct me if that's wrong? It's roughly in that range. Like San Fran has major injury issues. And the Rams are coming off of a bye. Okay, like they might improve, but the offensive line is still really poor. We've seen nothing of the Rams this year to indicate that they're the same as last year. The Seahawks are an unknown quantity. They're without DK Metcalf for at least a few weeks. I don't hate that. Like I 8-1, like the Cardinals offense and defense are both improving. That's what we can both say, or all three of us can say for certain right now. And they're already in the race. In terms of the North, the challenging thing is that who's going to take it from the Vikings, right? I mean, maybe the Packers turn it around, maybe, but like it's not going to be the Bears, it's not going to be the Lions. So maybe not going to be the Bears. So yeah, I mean that's a tougher bet for me to make because I could see the Vikings going to the playoffs at like 12-5 or 13-4 or something, having played nobody and just being a one and done.
Yeah, it's a bonus anti-post outright plays there. Perhaps we won't lock a bet in here. I'm not going to spoil whose best bet it is, and we'll just move on very quickly. But stay tuned to the end for someone to redo their case there. We'll move on to the second game we have on the slate, and it's the Giants at the Seahawks. Daniels Jones, to see it, Giants are absolutely flying. We'll take a look at the betting first. Again, Giants are the underdogs, 2.42 on the money line with the Seahawks 1.65. Point spread gives the Giants a 3-point start at 1.94, and the total is 45.0. Suma, I know you're neutral on this game. Do you want to maybe set it up for the guys in terms of going into this game? It's so hard with Daniel Jones, and he's getting written off, and the Giants just keep on winning and winning. Like it's sometimes it's just like, when do you come on and join the bandwagon, or is it just a case of just fading them and just keep maybe staying away from their games, perhaps?
I think the interesting question is how will the Giants find a creative way to win this week? Because
it's true.
Like every game comes down to the wire in the fourth quarter, and last week they even had a goal line stop at the 1 yard line.
Yeah.
I mean, that team is unbelievable. Their coaching staff is unbelievable. Against the Seahawks, I mean, the Seahawks defense is bad. They're very bad. They looked solid against the Cardinals and the Chargers for the past 2 weeks, but I don't really think that this was the highest standard we should measure them against, especially with the Chargers last week. Mike Williams got hurt at some point. Keenan Allen was basically playing as a decoy. Their offensive line is banged up. The Cardinals just had a very shitty game, lost Marquise Brown at some point later in the game. I still think that the Seahawks defense is not good whatsoever, or not even a average unit. And they're also very bad against short passes and running back passes. So I think this could be a path for the Giants where when Robinson has a very good game, Saquon Barkley has a very good game running and catching the ball. And that will probably be the path that the Giants should or will go in this game. I mean, their deep passing game is almost non-existent. And if they try, they will probably to Tyreek Woolen, which is probably not the greatest idea. So I think that the path for success lies in running the ball, getting Daniel Jones on the move, throw it short to Wendell Robinson and Saquon Barkley. That should be enough to move the ball. And then it depends on how good can the Seahawks be without DK Metcalf. I mean, the Giants, they always have a few highlight plays every week, especially late in the game. We are a blitz, we are playing tight man coverage, whatsoever, but every underlying efficiency metric points towards them being a bottom 10 defense. So Geno Smith has been looking really, really good. They still have a few playmakers, and it's going to be interesting to see how Wink Martindale can attack that offense.
Yeah, so I'll hand over to you, Rob. Watching the Giants Jaguars, like there was a play where Jags were like 3rd and 1 and they ended up 4th and 1, and then they ended up just making an absolute mess, and it was turned over. And I think the spot might have been a little bit, I don't know. There was just a lot happening in that game.
But I would say that both the 3rd and 1 and the 4th and 1 were both successful for the Jags, but somehow the refs thought differently on both of those, especially the 3rd and 1. No one knows what play I'm talking about, by the way, is a Travis Etienne like draw play where I changed the channel because I thought it was a first down. Anyways, we digress. We move on.
We're over it, which is we're over.
We're not all over it, Daniel. We're not all over it, but we are trying to get over it. Maybe the Giants coaching staff is just good enough to overcome a lot of their deficiencies. Like I feel like on a weekly basis, I just keep saying that this is a really well coached team. Like they seem to have figured it out. They bring in Dayball. He gets the most out of Daniel Jones. What do you remember from Daniel Jones from years past? These back-breaking turnovers, can't feel pressure, tons of fumbles, and they've just got away from that, getting the ball out of his hand much quicker, running the ball a lot more effectively than they have in past years, and they do that behind an offensive line that has a great left tackle, but really isn't good anywhere else, and they've been fairly successful in doing that regularly. So I don't think the Giants are quite as bad as people want to believe. Like they just think the bottom is going to fall off on them and they're going to all of a sudden go on this massive losing streak. And I don't necessarily think that's going to happen for this particular matchup. I will say I'm like coming around on the Seahawks more and more every week. My model likes them more and more, especially on the defensive side of the ball where they've been playing a lot better as of late. But for this particular matchup, you get another scenario where you have Geno Smith going up against a team that blitzes heavily, which we saw against the Arizona defense a few weeks back. And Geno Smith does not tend to handle the blitz very well. He's doing a lot of things well this year. He's throwing downfield well, way better quarterback than we've ever seen. But the Giants blitz at the highest rate in the entire league. And I think that's going to be a problem for Geno Smith, especially since he doesn't have DK Metcalf as that safety valve to get it out of his hands really quickly and target him specifically this week. So I don't have a strong opinion on the Giants. I make this game like minus 2.7 for the Seahawks. So I would lean towards Seattle here, but it's not a game that I've personally bet myself, and I'd be unlikely to have a bet on it this week. Just trying to explain my lean to the Giants is a lot to do with the way that Geno Smith handles pressure.
Yeah, so over to you, Drew, and I want to give you props on the Seahawks money line 3.1. It came in against the Chargers, and they're almost like your team now, and I'm following them. So when it's on the sheet, you're tipping them up here. I'm like, this is going to be a strong case. Drew was a small lean, so get him off the small lean and put this in as official bet.
Yeah, the Giants do suck, and they're about to go on a long losing streak. No,
I'll clip that.
That's not really my opinion. This is just kind of a matter of if this was a neutral game and neutral field, and neither both teams are just kind of in a totally neutral situation, I would probably make this Seattle -3, and I wouldn't play it. But I do not like this spot for the Giants for a lot of reasons. They're traveling across country at the end of a pretty aggressive amount of travel over this last month. They're getting close to their bye week and, needing to, kind of regroup here. They've exceeded expectations to this point in the season. Daniel Jones isn't turning the ball over anymore, but now he does go up against the Seattle defense that I do think is good at creating turnovers. Darrell Taylor is emerging on that defensive line, had a beautiful strip sack and recovery against Justin Herbert last week. And I think in general, my expectation for the Seahawks defense from week 1 to week 17 or week 18, game 17 is going to be general improvement. And that's because they're coached by Pete Carroll, who develops young talent on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe his most significant strength that he brings to a head coaching, repertoire of what all you're bringing to the team. That's his. And he can also get his guys fired up. They're playing at home after a big win, which, is sometimes a spot for a letdown. But I think people in Seattle are genuinely excited about this team. Now, am I nervous that Geno Smith is performing at the very limits of his abilities and that ultimately there will be some regression? Yes, I am nervous about that. Am I nervous that he's going up against a team that blitzes? In doing so? Yes, I am nervous about that. But I do think that the Seattle offensive line has performed a lot better than people expected as we came into the season. People have them rated like in the 30s, and they are clearly above average in my mind. They look like they have hit on both of their tackles, who are rookies, which is impossible. They look like they have hit on both of their cornerbacks, who are rookies, which seems impossible. But all that said, this is a team that's playing with confidence. They're playing well, and they have a very good spot where they're welcoming the Giants across the country after they just had to go back down and play in Florida. So I think if there was a game where the Giants kind of remind you that they do have a lower floor than their record would suggest, this feels like that game, just because of the situation. So, there's not a lot I love on the card this week. We already covered the Cardinals, which is one of my bets. Seattle is my other bet. I got a decent position at 2.5 on Sunday. I added more 3, so I'm kind of in this. I'm fully staked at 3 -105. I think at the current price, it's the only one that I would feel like there is sort of an X factor long tail to them covering with ease if Ken Walker can continue his progression as a player who really distinguishes himself. I look at the talent on the Giants defense and I have huge questions. I look at the loss of Evan Neal as potentially an avenue for Daniel Jones to be less successful in the ground, and similarly Saquon Barkley. So, I think realistically, this is still going to probably be a competitive game, but there's enough of a long tail of Seattle creating turnovers and continuing their offensive success that I think they ultimately are worthy of a 3-point favorite and laying the points here. So Seattle -3 for me, probably the only case I can make in this game.
Very good case too. We won't lock it in as official bet. It is someone's best bet. And again, I don't want to spoil it too much in that regard. It's NFC West heavy, and we touched on the Cardinals potentially being a good bet for that division, but the two other teams are the 49ers at the Rams. Let's take a look at the betting as we have it at matchbook.com. Rams are 1.88. The 49ers, are 1.88. Rams are 2.04. 49ers -1 is 1.93. And the total is 43. And that's a little bit shaded towards the under at 1.92. So yeah, Rob, talk to me about these two teams. Like you touched on, the Cardinals being probably a good bet if you could get around the 8 or 9 to 1 in the NFC West. So where are you at currently with the 49ers and the Rams?
I think this is a very difficult game to unpack personally. Understand the interest level in the game being NFC West matchup. These teams play each other regularly. You do have the Kyle Shanahan versus Sean McVay factor that will be talked about ad nauseum this week, with Shanahan tending to own McVay. The 49ers-Rams game earlier this year was very lopsided in the favor of the 49ers as well. With that said, a lot has transpired since then. The 49ers do have injuries on defense, getting a little bit more clarity as the week goes on. Since then, the Rams, they've still struggled on the offensive line. There are major offensive line concerns there. Their left tackle, Joe Noteboom, is out. Their left guard, David Edwards, is out. likely getting their center Brian Allen back, though, which is big. And they come off of a bye week where they can reshuffle that offensive line and try to figure it out. So they've had a couple weeks now to prepare for that. But there's a couple things that are really going unnoticed here. I don't even want to say that they're going unnoticed, but market seems to be disregarding the potential absences of Deebo Samuel and Kyle Juszczyk. And I think Kyle Juszczyk is a sneaky, valuable player to that offense. Like, people don't realize the value he provides both in the running game and in the passing game. And I think that honestly makes me way more inclined to bet the Rams than I previously would have been. Don't know which way the market's going to go on this game. Honestly, have no clue. I think people will be enticed by getting San Fran just because of the fact that they have traditionally dominated this rivalry, and the fact that, let's call it out for what it is, there will probably be more 49ers fans in attendance at this game. There will be Rams fans as well. So you can make an argument that there's no Rams home field advantage. But I'm kind of liking the situation way more so for the Rams this week than I would have previously, with the way that the injuries are factoring into the equation here. So this would be actually a Rams or nothing for me. Probably would just play them on the money line at any underdog price. I have not placed the bet, probably won't, but that would be the way that I look.
Yeah, Sommer, you're in agreement here. You have a little bit stronger lean on the Rams, I take it?
It's a lean. It's not as strong as my Cardinals lean. If this game was played 7 weeks later, this could be a completely different situation, as Rob has mentioned, because the Rams are coming out of the bye week. Van Jefferson likely back, Troy Hill likely back, center Brian Allen might be back. And on the other side, the 49ers are dealing with some injuries on their own. I mean, the defense is kind of banged up, even though everyone might be able to play. Trent Williams was basically playing on a bum ankle last week. He had struggled really defending any edge bend from Frank Clark in that game, which was really weird to see. Deebo Samuel has a hamstring injury. I don't know whether he's going to play. If he's going to play, he might be limited. They have a bye week afterwards. I think this is such an important game that Shanahan might not want to rest him. But if he's going to play, I can't really see that coming off a hamstring pull that he's going to be 100%. Kyle Juszczyk will be out. And I think Kyle Juszczyk might be sneakily underrated for this offense because he's the blocking guy in all the run blocking schemes. And off of that, Kyle Shanahan runs a ton of play action. So Kyle Juszczyk is really an integral part of their offense, especially their passing attack. And I looked at Sports Info Solution, the on-off report for Kyle Juszczyk over the past 4 seasons. And it's very interesting. With Kyle Juszczyk on the field, the 49ers passing attack is averaging 0.14 EPA per pass attempt more than if he's off the field. And we are dealing with a very, very large sample size, over 1,000 snaps. And I think this is really massive. And that might be one of the underrated injury losses this week. The Rams, McVay is coming off his bye week. He simply has 2 weeks to somehow fix this offense. It won't be perfect. They might not improve significantly, but there has to be something. Like, Sean McVay is a very good play caller, very good play designer. There must be something that he's able to fix during the bye week. And also, he's got tape from the Falcons and the Chiefs over the past couple of weeks who had some success against the Niners defense. I just subjectively think there must be something to it that Sean McVay has been able to come out of the bye week, throw some new wrinkles in. I don't know, Van Jefferson on fly sweeps. There won't be any 1.6 yards per carry Cam Akers once this week because he is not playing. So yeah, overall, I just think that the situation favors the Rams here. 6 weeks later, it could be a completely different situation. 4 weeks ago, it was a different situation, but I think this time might be a little buy low spot for the Rams.
Yeah, I like that angle with the bye week and Sean McVay and putting our faith in him. Drew, if you don't mind, I'd like to read out what you wrote on the document because it made me laugh earlier. A self-imposed suspension for betting Niners and the Rams.
Yeah, so last time these two teams played, my best bet was Rams on this show. And
Yes.
so I am currently serving a suspension from betting this matchup because that was not the correct bet. And, I don't disagree with any of the takes from these guys. I will just say that for sure, Rob's point about the home field advantage is real. And by the way, you mentioned, talk about a marquee matchup. This is a replay of the NFC Championship game from last year. And boy, oh boy, how these two teams have fallen, because the range of outcomes for Rams and Niners, like, could either of these teams make it back to the NFC Championship game? I would have a little higher confidence that the Niners could, but I don't think either is a realistic candidate for that. And could both of these teams miss the playoffs? Absolutely. Like, the way that the injuries are breaking, the way that their quarterbacks are playing right now, like, it would not surprise me if these two teams are both out of the mix of the NFC playoffs, even as bad as the NFC has been, which is crazy amount of turnover, which, and would be a fun story. Like, if we go through and, the talking heads get to kind of be, both NFC finalists last year missed the playoffs this year. The NFL, so crazy, parody, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, but both of these teams are performing poorly. Coaches aren't adjusting well to the current, the way that the NFL exists. The offensive line issues for both teams, have not gotten fixed. And maybe they get better for the Rams with the center coming back, but Noteboom as an absence is non-trivial. Matt Stafford is dealing with the bum elbow, not a mobile guy in general. I think his the most you could expect from him is 3 rushes, 10 yards in this sort of a game. The Niners defense with Fred Warner and Hufanga, very, very decent at just in general keeping him contained. So I think he's going to get sacked. I think Jimmy G is a turnover waiting to happen. And a lot of the missing pieces for the Niners on offense would have me leaning under if I was going to make any kind of a play on this game. But as you noted, still serving my suspension. If this is ultimately a playoff matchup at some point, I think I will be. I will have served my time, and I can bet that game. But for now, at least, I'm out of the running.
I will defend you, Drew. You got great closing line value on that game.
Great closing line value.
I feel like you had the right side the way that the market moved. So we'll at least give you that.
Yeah, here's just a quick side note on that, because there was a little discussion from some sharp folks on Twitter the last couple of weeks about that particular game. I don't know why that one keeps coming up over and over again, but it does. There are a couple of reasons you make a bet. One is just in general, you're off market on a team, or maybe you're off market on both teams. Maybe you have 2-sided handicap. And the other reason would be that you have some conviction that a team is not going to perform to their median expectation, right? You have some reason to say, well, these guys are going to come out here and hit an 84th percentile. Well, I had both going for me. I thought I was higher on the Rams than market, and I thought there was a decent chance they were going to give us an 84th percentile in that game, because they have Aaron Donald going up against a makeshift offensive line, but Kyle Shanahan schemed that completely out of the handicap. And so that's kind of why I kind of come back and said, okay, I made a bad bet. Number one, I was wrong about the team. And number two, I made a bad assumption about how they'd perform. And, so kind of in, resetting, that's kind of why I am where I am with the Rams.
Yeah, I'm going to lock in a small lean money line bet on the Rams at over even money 2.02. I do like the coming off a bye week and putting our faith in Sean McVay. So let's lock it in, and we'll move on. Soon we're going to go to you for the Jets, the Patriots at the Jets. We'll take a look at the betting as we have at Matchbook.com. Patriots are 1.81. The Jets underdogs here 2.16. The point spread gives Jets a 2.5 head start at 1.9, and the total is 40.5. A little bit shaded towards the over. Suma, like four in a row, the Jets are flying. I was a touch surprised at the money line market here. I thought the Jets would be a little bit closer, possibly slight favorites. Am I mad?
I think the market is getting this probably right and not wrong, because I don't think there's a reason for the Jets to lay points here. The Jets have been great 4-0. Some explosive runs with Breece Hall, great defense, some interceptions, some sacks, everything looking great. But they've arguably have the worst passing attack in the entire league right now. I mean, Zach Wilson really flat out stinks right now. He cannot get anything going. He just lost his starting right tackle. Corey Davis might be out this game. Breece Hall is gone. But I think Breece Hall really took a lot of a lot of holes and really made some explosive plays out of it. And that's not been the case with either Michael Carter or with James Robinson for the Jaguars this season. So right tackle downgrade, running back downgrade, receiving corp, maybe a downgrade. Corey Davis, like I said, probably out. Elijah Moore comes back, going against a very good passing defense for the Patriots who can play man coverage. And Zach Wilson, since he's in the league, he has been really, really bad against man coverage. For whatever reason, he has atrocious EPA per play numbers against man coverage. I also think that it will help Bill Belichick this week to face a running game without a rushing quarterback. That comes with some designed runs of a mini bye week that will tremendously help. This will be a more of a traditional run game with Michael Carter and James Robinson instead of Breece Hall. So I think that the Patriots, who have found very intelligent ways to contain the Lions and the Browns rushing attacks in recent weeks, will also find some recipes to contain this Jets run game. And if you take away the run game, I mean, I don't think there's much else that Zach Wilson and the current state of the New York Jets passing tech will do against this Patriots defense. And on the other side, Mac Jones, one more week removed from his high ankle sprain, should look a little bit better. The Patriots are decent at running the ball. I think there is something to be had in this matchup. I also think that the Pats, and not like the Broncos last week, I think they will not target Sauce Gardner 9 times in this one. They will probably look at some other ways, like attacking those linebackers, maybe more DJ Reed on the other side, maybe some screens, play action. I just think that overall the matchup bodes very well for the Pats. The Jets defense is a little bit overrated in my opinion after playing 4 backup and rookie quarterbacks, also in kind of bad situations when we remember Skylar Thompson coming into the game after the first snap, Trubisky going out, and Kenny Pickett in his first ever half in professional football. And I just don't trust that Jets offense. I think the Pats are the better team in this matchup, and I think anything under 3 looks like value here.
Yeah, into you, Drew, on this. It's Patriots or pass.
Yeah, this is a classic AFC East rivalry where one team is getting it done with stout defense and disciplined quarterback just managing the game. And the other team is a chaotic mess with no offensive coordinator and no quarterback, or switching quarterbacks mid game. Like, this is very much, Freaky Friday here, where you have swapped franchises and the Patriots feel more like the Jets. I don't understand what's going on there. I don't know why Belichick is doing this to his quarterbacks. If they had played Mac Jones for a full game and just let it play out against the Bears, I'm probably all over the Patriots here. It maybe is my favorite bet of the week. But I don't understand why you shake a young quarterback's confidence like that in that, in a primetime game at home like that, especially against an inferior opponent. Like, it didn't make sense. And I don't know what's going on between Belichick and Jones, but he surely doesn't believe in the kid. And that spooks me off of this game. But the Jets are a team that I very much do not believe in. I think they are going to come down to earth in a pretty aggressive way at some point. I can see the Giants making the playoffs, but I cannot see the Jets making it in the much more competitive AFC. So, the way that Zach Wilson is performing right now, this is a team that, fade alert. If they somehow win this game, I'm going to find some pretty aggressive ways to make a financial stake against that team doing anything.
Yeah, Rob, you're in full agreement here. Look, I guess where I was sort of coming from was the Monday Night Football, and it was just almost too bad to be true what was going on there.
Yeah, I think that matchup made the Patriots look a lot worse than they actually are defensively.
Yeah.
Patriots have been pretty strong defensively this year, but they have, for whatever reason, this is like kind of going back for years now under Belichick, struggled against mobile quarterbacks. They got burned by Lamar Jackson earlier this year. They got burned by Justin Fields. I think the Patriots play a very disciplined style of defense. Players know how to get to certain spots on the field, but they don't really know how to react in a lot of those situations, and Justin Fields killed them. I don't think Zach Wilson is going to kill them. I think I'm not, by the way, a running backs don't matter guy. I think there are some running backs that do matter. I think Breece Hall, that injury is impactful for this offense. He was a huge playmaker. The Elijah Vera Tucker injury cannot be understated because they're without Mekhi Becton and George Fant and Max Mitchell already. So that's a big one as well. But Zach Wilson in particular, he's had 126 plays this year. Of quarterbacks that have had that many plays this season, he ranks 27th out of 31 in EPA per play. The quarterbacks that are worse than Zach Wilson this year, Russell Wilson, Davis Mills, Carson Wentz, Baker Mayfield. The quarterback that is right ahead of him at number 26 is Matt Ryan, who ain't going to see the field anymore.
Not playing. Yeah.
That's how bad Zach Wilson has been this year. The defense has more than made up for it, but I don't know how this can go on forever. It's just too much smoke and mirrors right now. I will say this about Mac Jones in particular. I did a show this morning where somebody called Mac Jones overrated. And my whole thought process was like, how do you call somebody that nobody thinks is good overrated?
Yeah.
I think Mac Jones is underrated, personally. I think he's one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the league. If you go back to the start of last year and look at all the starting quarterbacks that are in the league, he ranks 8th in terms of success rate amongst quarterbacks. He doesn't do the flashy things, doesn't throw downfield a whole lot, but he consistently moves the offense. And I think that New England can move the ball better than the New York Jets in this game. Overall, I think this is a short price. I would have made it 3 in this game. I think anything under that is a valuable bet. So I'm joining Suma here on the Patriots.
Yeah, I think we can lock that in. Patriots minus 2.5, 2.0, the broad agreement with the guys. So to confirm the couple of bets we have so far from those 4 marquee games, the Rams 2.04 on the money line against the 49ers, and the Patriots minus 2.5, 2.0 against the Jets. For a full recap of those bets and any other bets and best bets coming up, head to insights.matchbook.com. Full recap there will be available from Friday morning. And if you don't have a Matchbook account and you're looking to set one up, we currently have an offer of bet £30 and get £30 in free bets. This is a great offer for anyone looking to get a £10 free bet week on week. So if you put your £30 bet on week 8, you're going to get a £10 free bet week 9, week 10, week 11. Great way to enjoy the podcast. Follow the guys' best bets, or maybe just follow Drew. 4-0 last week, Drew, so no pressure on you this time as he cheers. So let's get straight into the any other bets. And there's some good picks here, Drew. Straight over to you and make the case. Titans.
Yeah, go get those. And go get those free pounds. Pound can only go up from here. So
yes,
let's go. Titans Texans over is an ugly game. I get it. But if you watched what happened with the Texans defensively against the Raiders, they do not defend the run, period. And now they're going up against a team whose plan A, B, and C is to get Derrick Henry the ball and wants to get him 30 carries. Well, by all means, go do it, Titans. This is the game to get it done. I think Titans, being successful on the ground early and often in this game, generating a lead, putting some scoreboard pressure on the Texans and Davis Mills to sling it in comeback mode sets up for a total that's about 3.5 points too low by my numbers. 44 would be fair for me. So over 40.5, favorite total of the week.
Yeah, over 40.5, currently 1.98 on Matchbook. Titans at the Texans. Rob, over to you on the Panthers, plus 4.5, 1.88 at the Falcons. So we've a few comments in here regarding the Panthers, but take it away.
Yeah, we have PJ Walker in the chat today
brilliant
as well.
Brilliant to get
and I've trashed him in the past, but he did play very well last week. I mean, the Falcons are going from a role where they've been huge underdogs pretty much most of the year to now a role where they have to win by margin. And they're missing pretty much like most of their secondary. AJ Terrell is week to week. Casey Hayward is on IR. Jalen Hawkins is out. There's no guarantee D. Alford plays, so they might be without their top 3 cornerbacks. And some teams are able to overcome that, but the Falcons are dead last in the league in pressure rate. They don't get after the quarterback. So this could be another game where PJ Walker has success. And honestly, even if he doesn't, I like the matchup for the Panthers defense anyways, because the Falcons are a heavy running team. They run 12% over expected on all plays. They run 15% over expected on first down. Carolina has a top 4 rush EPA this year. Overall, the defense has been solid from top to bottom. If we strip out garbage time this year, the Panthers are number 5 in EPA, number 4 in success rate. So I don't see this large of a gap between these two teams. I mean, it's ugly. The Carolina is a horrible football team. Don't get me wrong, but very different situation for Atlanta here, needing to win by margin. I think the Panthers can keep this close and possibly pull out the outright win.
So potentially look at the money line there, but Rob's putting up plus 4.5 Panthers, 1.88 at the Falcons. We'll go over to you, Suma. The Bears at the Cowboys, minus 9.5, 1.98. And Dak Prescott made his long-awaited return last week, and you're expecting him to kick on this week.
Yeah, I mean, it was very encouraging to see the Bears coming out with a much better offensive game plan, getting Justin Fields on the move and not really relying too much on a straight drop-back passing game. I think that really caught the Patriots by surprise. But I also think that this is now a completely different game. They're not coming out of a mini bye. They have a short week against a better defense with a very great pass rush. The Cowboys can be had on the ground against the run, but I also think that this defense has enough speed to contain Justin Fields and not get run all over it like the Pats did last Monday. I mean, in hindsight, the Bears probably played at their top range of potential outcomes. They recovered all 6 fumbles in that game. They caught 3 interceptions. It was the first game for Mac Jones coming off that high ankle sprain. I mean, Bailey Zappi came in at some point. Pats cannot defend the quarterback run game very well. 11 days rest, like everything went really well for them. And I think this week they might be running into a buzzsaw at Dallas. Cowboys offense, Dak looked okay last week. You saw that he was still struggling with his thumb a little bit, not making a few routine throws. I think with another week of getting first team reps, that should be much better this week. The Cowboys are good on both sides of the ball. I also think that the Ezekiel Elliott injury might somehow be beneficial to the Cowboys offense because Tony Pollard is the much better running back, more explosive. I mean, Pollard ranks 3rd in PFF rushing grade, 1st in yards after contact, 5th in breakaway percentage. He's really having a nice season, but he's just handcuffed behind Ezekiel Elliott. That will help them. The Bears defense is not good. They lost Robert Quinn via trade this week. Quinn is not having a very good season, but it really takes away some of the depth along their defensive line, which ranks, I think, 31st or 32nd in pressure rate. I think also worse in PFF's pass rushing grade. Yeah, I think the Cowboys offense will score here, and I think Justin Fields will have a much tougher time against that defense.
That's Cowboys minus 9.5, 1.98 against the Bears. So we will get into best bets time, and all 3 of them have been covered throughout the podcast. Drew, we'll go over to you to take it away on the Seahawks. Give us a 30 to 45 second, a lovely little bite-sized social media clip that I can just clip out and throw up on Twitter.
Okay, bad spot for the Giants. I respect the team. They may be underrated by markets still, but this is not a great spot traveling across the country, taking on a Seahawks team that continues to improve defensively, that has a nose for creating takeaways. I think in general, if there's a week where we see Daniel Jones regress to the Daniel Jones of old, this is the week against a very ball hockey Seahawks team in Seattle. Let's go Seahawks. Not going to fit. It's been working. Not going to try to fix it. So let's keep going with the Seahawks.
Yeah, they're becoming known as Drew's Seahawks here, particularly if they get this done. We'll go to you, Suma. Take it away. The Cardinals plus 3.5 at the Vikings. Tell us all we need to know about. Just summarize what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I think the Cardinals offense is going to be much better going forward with DeAndre Hopkins in the formation. One, and secondly, that they are finally moving him around. I think him and Zach Ertz over the middle of the field against a defense that has been really bad against the pass, especially against passes over the middle, 32nd in DVOA, 32nd in EPA per dropback. They played not the greatest schedule of opposing passing offenses and looked really, really bad in terms of underlying efficiency metrics. I think the Cardinals will score. And on the other side, I'm not really sold enough on the Vikings offense that they can beat them by a margin here. I think this is a above average offense at best. Kirk Cousins struggling against the blitz this season. That might be kind of regress towards the mean at some point, but it's still very, very bad against a defense that blitzes at the 4th highest rate. Overall, I really like this matchup for the Cardinals, and I happily take anything over a field goal here.
You heard it first. Cardinals plus 3.5 at the Vikings, 1.94 currently on Matchbook. And finally, Rob, we'll go to you. Patriots minus 2.5 even money at the Jets, and we locked it in earlier as a bet. And take it away, maybe 30, 45 seconds again, or why you think this is your best bet on the card.
Yeah, I think this is a gift that's stemming from recent results. People are forgetting that the Patriots are still very good and did blow out the Browns and the Lions prior to losing to the Bears, a quarterback in Justin Fields that they just struggled to shut down in terms of the running game. I don't think the Jets offense provides a challenging matchup for the Patriots defense, particularly because Zach Wilson is a bad quarterback. He has struggled this year. Last week, they just had a 33% success rate on offense against the Broncos defense. They end up winning that game on the backs of their defense, but the Patriots offense will give them a more challenging test than the Broncos offense and Brett Rippon gave them 1 week ago. I do think that this is a great spot for the Patriots to get back on track. I think this number probably would have been closer to 3, if not 3, had the Patriots just taken care of business on Monday Night Football. So I'm not going to react to recent games because we see the ups and downs weekly in the NFL. I think New England gets back on track.
Rob sold me. I'm in. Rowing the boat together this week, guys. Let's go.
When you mentioned
together.
When you mentioned recency bias, I was thinking, he's talking about me here, isn't he?
No, well, I mean, I also think we should. I listened to Suma break down the Rams game. I think we should martingale the Rams against the 49ers until we eventually get that money back.
Yeah. I like that. For those watching on YouTube, thanks for your comments. Do hit that like button, and if you are watching back, as a lot of people do outside the live stream, do comment your best bet. We do like keeping an eye on them. My thanks to Drew, my thanks to Rob, my thanks to Suma. If you missed anything earlier, Matchbook Insights the place to get all the lads' bets. We'll be back next week. Until then, enjoy NFL Week 8, and we'll chat to you next week. Have a great weekend.